Hey guys, so recently I had a friend of mine reach out and ask me some questions about building a computer. Pretty much he's been a console gamer for a long time and he wanted to switch over to building a PC. His options were either he was thinking about buying the new Xbox One X, I think it's called. I don't really follow consoles that much, but I believe that's what it's called. Anyways, he wanted to either do that or go to building a gaming PC. And me being the guy that I am, convinced him, hey, you should go the gaming PC route. So he said he had a budget of around $500 and asked me if I could come up with some builds for him to fit that budget. So I went ahead and I found some different builds that could kind of, go around a little bit under 500 and a little bit over 500. And, depending on what he wanted exactly out of the machine, other than, do you want just gaming, you want a little more of an all-around PC, or just, hey, what can be the cheapest thing I can get? So I gave him three different options, and then I figured, hey, maybe you guys would be interested in seeing, what those options are as well. First off, I'm using this website called PCPartPicker. If you're not familiar with PCPartPicker, it is an amazing website to kind of get a build together. You can compare a lot of parts next to each other, see different specs, see different prices at different retailers. All in all, very good tool. Highly recommend it. Anyways, so like I said before, I have three options. I have a really cheap option, an option that's closer to $500, and I would say, a good middle ground, and then something that's a little bit more than $500, but really kind of the best you can get around the $500 option. So, first off, all of our systems here are going to be based on the AMD Ryzen 3 1200 CPU. So this CPU, in my opinion, is a really, really good entry-level gamer CPU without a lot of compromises. So it's got four physical cores, not 2 cores and 4 threads, but 4 physical cores, which means you're going to get a lot more performance in games than you would if you had a dual core with hyper-threading, such as some of the Pentiums out there. And then on top of that, it's clocked at 3.1 with a 3.4 boost. Which means it's going to be not the best, but paired with the graphics cards that we're going to have in our 3 different lists here, it's going to be, a really good pairing for that. Also comes with the stock cooler. That's not too bad, so that's good. You don't have to go out and buy an aftermarket cooler. And even though in this option we don't have an overclocking motherboard, it is overclockable, which means in some of our more expensive options here, you can get a little bit more performance out of it, which makes the the price per dollar, or the performance per dollar, really good. Anyways, so kind of just all of these systems are going to be kind of similar base, so they're all going to include 8 gigs of RAM, the AMD Ryzen 3, like I said. The things that are at the same power supply, the things that are going to be different are going to be the case, the storage, and the graphics card and motherboard, mostly for all of them. So kind of where are the compromises here in this cheap option? So the compromise is, number one, motherboard. So the thing here with the motherboard is it's a cheap motherboard. It's not going to have a lot of features. It's not overclockable. You can't overclock on it. So that's kind of one of the downsides of this. But this is going for the cheapest you can get. And also if you're an entry level person, maybe you're not comfortable with overclocking yet. So most likely this is a good option for you. It's going to include 8 gigabytes of RAM, which in my opinion is the least you should go for an actual gaming machine. You could probably get away with 4 gigabytes on most titles, but the majority of games are going to really benefit from 8 gigs. We got a 1 terabyte Western Digital hard drive here. It's a pretty simple physical hard drive, but hey, for $41, you can't beat that price. Really, one of the areas we're kind of skimping a little bit here is case. So here's a Rosewood case, nothing special. It does have a side panel window though. I can actually open this here so you can get a little bit better look. It does have a side panel window, which is kind of cool, but other than that, pretty generic and plasticky. But hey, for the cheapest you can get, it'll get the job done. For power supply, this is actually a really good deal, 26 for a 450 watt power supply. The nice thing about it is 80 plus bronze, somewhat modular, meaning you only have to plug in some of the plugs all the time, which is good. And it's got a black and white theme, so hey, through that side panel window, it won't look too bad. So for, this is a gaming PC after all, so we got a nice little 1050 here as our GPU. So the big disadvantage of this 1050, it actually has pretty good performance for the price. The big problem with it is you're only getting 2 gigabytes of VRAM, which means that if you're ever going to try to step up outside of 1080p gaming, which I probably wouldn't recommend on a 1050 anyways, but if you're going to do that, then you're going to really run into issues at only having 2 gigabytes of VRAM. So, but anyways, the grand total here comes out to $434. So for what you're getting here, which is a pretty good 1080p gaming machine, you can probably play most modern titles on high at 1080p. $434 is a pretty good deal. So stepping up now to our more kind of all-around build under $500, let's kind of go over some of the differences here. So number one, we step up to a B350 motherboard here, also from ASRock, but the nice thing about a B350 is it's now overclockable, meaning that your AMD Ryzen 3 here, you're going to be able to get a little bit more performance out of it, and therefore get a little bit better, performance per dollar. So by upgrading the motherboard, which is only $10 more, you can overclock and get a little bit more performance on your Ryzen, which is nice. The secondary thing that we bump up here is we go from a 1050 to a 1050 Ti. Now, the advantage of that is not only are you getting, about 10 to 20% more performance depending on the game, but on top of that, you're getting a 4 gigabyte VRAM on this, which is going to give you a lot more headroom when it comes to texture sizes and stuff like that, possibly allowing you to go from, medium texture quality to higher ultra, which is really nice. I still would say this is a really good sweet spot for 1080p gaming. I wouldn't recommend 1440p and definitely not 4K on it. But again, this is a really good graphics card for kind of that range. And again, we're coming in at $479. So if you have a budget of $500, this is a really, really good build. Now, if we bump it up to $550 here, this is where we can start kind of getting a little bit more towards like what I would like to have for around $500. So again, we stay with the Ryzen 3 1200. Which is still a really good processor for this, and again, overclockable. And now we still have that B350 overclockable board, but here's where things kind of differ a little bit. Still the 8 gigs of RAM, but what we've added is we've added a 128 gig SSD. Now the nice thing about that is you can use that as your Windows boot drive, which is going to give you a lot more speedy and snappiness to your operating system. When you click on things, programs, they're going to open faster. Your system is just generally going to feel faster, which is really nice. And then you can still use this 1 terabyte hard drive for all your games, all your music, all your videos, stuff like that. Stuff that doesn't hugely benefit from a faster storage medium. And then we'll stay with the 1050 Ti, which again I think is a really good card for this price range. I mean, if you're going $500, pretty much 1050 Ti, maybe a 460 or RX 460 if you could find a 4 gigabyte one out there, but unfortunately there's really none available in this price range due to mining. People buying them for Bitcoin mining. But the secondary thing that's a lot different about this, other than adding the storage, is the case. So by bumping up about $15 in case, you can find this Cooler Master Master Box Lite, which in my opinion, for under $40, it retails for $39.99. I mean, you have to pay a little bit of shipping, but for $39.99, this is like an insanely awesome case. You get a huge side panel window, you get good fan mounts for liquid cooling, you get a pretty good build quality for $39. I'm actually going to release a video here pretty soon about this case. I just think it's like an insanely good case for the price. But anyways, so this one right here, which is the one that I would probably pick out of these three, comes out to about $553. But depending on what your budget is, maybe your budget is $500 and that's, completely steady. These are some good options for you. I'll put a link to all of these part lists in the description. So again, this is, got to remember, these are the parts available, let's see here, what is it, August 20th of 2017. So some of these are going to differ depending on when you're watching this video, but you can mix and match some of these parts. Let's say this specific 1050 Ti is not available. Maybe there's another 1050 Ti that you could, supplement in here from a different manufacturer. But point being is this is kind of a nice little starting point, I think, for anybody trying to get into, a gaming computer around $500. So I think hopefully, so again, like I said, this is for one of my friends, sending him these three options and, letting him kind of choose what he wants. Hopefully I can get him to convince him to let me build this computer and make a video about it and then kind of post it for you guys. Hopefully that can happen. If not, then, this is probably the only video you'll see on it. But if so, maybe there'll be a follow-up video. And, maybe he won't let me, but if, this video has enough views on it and stuff, maybe I'll just build it anyways, just for people to see. So, thanks for watching, and yeah, if you have any questions, post them down in the comments, and I'll make sure I link these three part lists down there too.